It was one of those nights when the sky seemed to have given up on holding itself together. Rain poured down in thick, relentless sheets, turning Seattle's streets into rivers of reflected neon and shadow. The kind of rain that soaks through your coat before you've even taken 3 steps. The kind that makes you wonder why you left the house at all. But he didn't have a choice. He'd been stuck in a board meeting until nearly 10, and his daughter was waiting at home, probably curled up on the couch with a book, maybe already asleep but still waiting. He drove slowly, windshield wipers slapping back and forth like tired arms trying to keep up. His mind wasn't on the road, not really. It was on the quarterly reports, the investors breathing down his neck, the way his daughter had looked at him that morning when he'd missed her school play rehearsal. Again. He'd promised her he'd be there. Again. And again. Something at work had pulled him away. He sighed, rubbing his temple with one hand while the other gripped the steering wheel. 2 years. It had been 2 years since his wife passed, and some days still felt like the first. He was doing his best, really he was, but best never seemed to be enough. He turned onto a quieter street, cutting through an older part of town to avoid the downtown traffic. Streetlights flickered here and there, some burnt out, others casting weak yellow circles on the wet pavement. That's when he saw her. At first he thought it was a pile of clothes, discarded, forgotten, left out in the storm. But then it moved. Just slightly. A small shivering shape huddled under the awning of an empty bus stop. No coat, bare feet. One arm wrapped tightly around her middle, the other pressed against her side like she was trying to hold herself together. He slowed the car without thinking. Pulled over to the curb, tires hissing against the wet asphalt. For a second, he just sat there watching. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she'd be okay. But then she lifted her head and he saw her face. She couldn't have been more than 13. Her dark hair was plastered to her cheeks, her eyes wide and red-rimmed from crying. There was a cut on her forearm, blood mixing with rainwater, dripping onto the concrete below. She looked terrified. Not just cold or tired, deeply bone-deep afraid. Something in his chest tightened. He thought of his daughter. What if that were her out here, alone in the rain? He turned off the engine, grabbed his umbrella from the back seat and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like a wall. He hurried across the street, boots splashing through puddles, and stopped a few feet from the bus stop. He didn't want to scare her. Didn't want to loom over her like another threat. "Hey," he said softly, crouching down so he wasn't towering over her. "Are you okay?" She flinched at the sound of his voice, pulling her knees tighter to her chest. Her eyes darted to his face, then away, then back again, searching maybe for kindness or danger. He held his hands where she could see them. "No sudden moves, I'm not going to hurt you," he said. I saw you out here, in this weather." "You're hurt," she didn't speak, just shook her head quickly, like she was trying to say, no, don't look at me. But her body betrayed her. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. He opened the umbrella wider, shielding her from the worst of the rain. "My name's Daniel," he said. "I've got a daughter about your age. She's waiting for me at home. I can't leave you here like this," still no words. But her eyes softened just a little. Maybe it was the mention of his daughter. Maybe it was the way his voice didn't rise, didn't demand. Maybe she was just too tired to run anymore. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a clean handkerchief. Old habit, something his father had taught him. "Here," he said, holding it out. "For your arm." She hesitated, then slowly took it. Her fingers were ice cold. She pressed it to the cut, wincing. "I've got a car right there," he said, nodding toward the black sedan parked at the curb. "Warm, dry, I can take you somewhere safe. A hospital if you want, or my place is close. You can clean up, get something warm to eat. No pressure, no questions, just come with me." He didn't know why he said it like that, "come with me." It wasn't planned. It just came out quiet and steady like an offer, not a command. She looked at him for a long moment. Rain dripped from her eyelashes. Then so faint he almost missed it, she nodded. Relief washed over him, sharp and sudden. He stood slowly, offering his hand but not forcing it. She pushed herself up, wobbling a little on bare feet. He took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. It swallowed her whole, but she pulled it tight like a shield. He held the umbrella over both of them as they walked to the car. She kept her head down, but she didn't pull away. Once inside, he turned the heat up high, the car filled with the smell of wet leather and warmth. She sat stiffly in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on her lap, the handkerchief still pressed to her arm. "You don't have to talk," he said, starting the engine. Just rest. As he pulled back onto the road, he glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. But then just once she looked at him, not with fear, but with something like fragile hope. He drove carefully, taking the quietest streets home. His mind raced ahead. Clean towels, warm soup, call his doctor friend, make sure his daughter wasn't scared by a stranger showing up so late. But none of that mattered right now. Right now, what mattered was that this girl wasn't alone in the rain anymore. When they pulled into the driveway of his modest but comfortable house, a 2-story with a wraparound porch and a tire, swing his daughter still used sometimes, he turned off the car and looked at her. "We're here," he said gently. She nodded again, this time with a little more certainty. He led her inside, holding the door open. The house was quiet, warm, lit by a single lamp in the living room. From upstairs, a door creaked open. "Dad?" a small voice called. "In here, Lily," he answered. A moment later, his daughter appeared at the top of the stairs in pajamas and mismatched socks, her hair in a messy braid. She blinked sleepily, then froze when she saw the girl standing in the hallway, wrapped in her father's coat dripping on the hardwood floor. "Who's that?" Lily asked, not unkindly, just curious. "Well, I don't know her name yet," he said honestly, "but she needed help. Can you grab some towels from the bathroom? And maybe your extra blanket?" Lily didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'll get the fluffy one." As his daughter scampered off, he turned to the girl. "You're safe here," he said. "No one's going to hurt you." She looked around the house, the family photos on the wall, the books stacked by the couch, the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. Then for the first time she spoke. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse but clear. He smiled just a little. "You're welcome." And in that moment something shifted, not just for her but for him too. The weight he'd been carrying since his wife died didn't disappear, but it changed shape. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was responsibility, purpose, maybe even the beginning of something new. He didn't know her story yet. Didn't know where she'd come from or what she'd been through. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her go back out into the rain. Not tonight. Not ever if he could help it. Upstairs, Lily came back with an armful of towels and a thick pink blanket. She walked right up to the girl and held them out. "You can use my room if you want," she said shyly. "I've got extra socks too." The girl looked from Lily to Daniel, then back again. And for the first time that night, the corners of her mouth lifted, just barely, into something that almost looked like a smile. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, the house felt warmer than it had in a long, long time. The next morning came in soft and quiet, like the world was holding its breath after the storm. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the wooden table. The house smelled of toast, cinnamon, and something warm, like safety. Downstairs, the man, Daniel, stood at the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal. He hadn't slept much. Every time he'd closed his eyes, he'd seen that girl huddled under the bus stop, soaked and shivering. Now she was upstairs, wrapped in clean clothes borrowed from his daughter. Sleeping in the guest room they'd quickly made up with fresh sheets and an old stuffed bear. Lily insisted she'd outgrown, but still loved. He glanced at the clock. 7:15. He needed to call Dr. Patel, his longtime friend and family physician, before heading into the office. But first he poured 2 mugs of tea, one with honey for Lily, one black for himself. He set them on the table just as soft footsteps sounded on the stairs. Lily appeared first, rubbing her eyes, her pajamas rumpled. She stopped when she saw him. "Is she okay?" she whispered, even though they were alone. "I think so," he said, ruffling her hair. "She's still sleeping." Before Lily could ask more, another set of footsteps followed, lighter, hesitant. The girl stood at the bottom of the stairs, wearing one of Lily's oversized sweatshirts and a pair of socks that were too big. Her hair was damp from a shower, her face pale but clean. The cut on her arm had been gently bandaged with gauze and tape. She looked around like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be there. "Good morning," Daniel said softly, not moving from the stove. "Hungry?" She nodded barely. "Come sit," Lily said, already pulling out a chair. "Dad makes the best oatmeal. He puts bananas in it." The girl hesitated, then walked slowly to the table. She sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, like she was waiting for permission to exist. Daniel placed a bowl in front of her. "Eat as much as you want. There's more. She picked up the spoon with careful fingers and took a small bite. Then another. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. As they ate, Lily chatted about her dream from last night. A flying cat who delivered mail, and Daniel listened, but his mind was already working ahead. He'd called child services first thing that morning. They were sending someone by noon. He'd also left a message for Dr. Patel, but more than that, he kept watching the girl. The way she flinched when the kettle whistled. The way she scanned every doorway like she expected someone to appear. After breakfast, Lily tugged her sleeve. Do you like puzzles? We've got one with dolphins. It's almost done. The girl looked at Daniel as if asking silently, Is it okay? He nodded. Go ahead. Upstairs in the living room, the two girls sat cross-legged on the rug, sorting puzzle pieces. Lily talked non-stop. About school, her best friend, how she hated broccoli but loved green beans. And slowly, the other girl began to respond. Short answers at first, then a laugh. Quiet but real, when Lily pretended a puzzle piece was a talking seagull. Daniel watched from the hallway, arms crossed, heart full in a way he hadn't felt in years. At 10 o'clock, Dr. Patel arrived, tall, calm, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. He didn't wear a white coat, just a sweater and jeans. Morning, he said, shaking Daniel's hand. Where's our patient? Daniel led him to the kitchen, keeping his voice low. Her name's Maya. She hasn't said much, but she's eating and resting. There's a deep cut on her forearm, and I think she's been hurt before last night. Dr. Patel nodded. I'll be gentle. No pressure. When he approached Maya, he didn't loom or rush. He sat on the couch nearby and asked if she minded if he checked her arm. She nodded, holding it out without looking at him. He examined the wound carefully. This needed stitches, but it's clean now. Good job cleaning it last night. He paused. Any other pain? Headaches? Trouble breathing? She shook her head. What about your ribs? He asked gently. Does it hurt when you breathe deep? She hesitated, then gave the tiniest nod. Dr. Patel's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened with understanding. He didn't press, just wrapped a light bandage around her ribs and said, rest, warm baths, no heavy lifting. And if anything hurts more, tell someone, okay? She whispered. Okay. After he left, Daniel walked him to the door. She's scared to talk, he said quietly. But I think she's been through something bad. Dr. Patel put a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing bringing her in. Call child services, yes, but also just be there. Sometimes that's the most powerful medicine. By noon, a woman from Child Protective Services arrived. She was in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and a clipboard, but her voice was warm. She introduced herself as Ms. Rivera and asked if they could speak in the living room. Maya sat stiffly on the couch, eyes down. Lily stayed nearby, coloring at the coffee table like it was normal to have strangers in the house. Ms. Rivera didn't ask direct questions at first. She talked about the weather, about how nice the house smelled, about her own dog who hated thunderstorms. Slowly, Maya's guard lowered. Do you have a safe place to stay, Maya? Ms. Rivera finally asked. Maya shook her head. Where were you before last night? A long silence. Then so quiet they almost missed it. With my uncle. Is he taking care of you? Maya's hands clenched in her lap. She didn't answer. Ms. Rivera didn't push. You don't have to go back anywhere you don't feel safe, she said firmly. We'll find you a good place. A foster home, maybe. At that, Maya's head snapped up. No, she said, voice stronger now, please. I don't want to go to a foster home. Why not? Ms. Rivera asked gently. Because they move you around, and no one stays. Her voice cracked. I don't want to be alone again. Daniel's chest ached. He hadn't planned to speak, but the words came out anyway. She can stay here temporarily as long as needed. Ms. Rivera looked at him surprised. You're not related. I know. But she's safe here. My daughter. They've already bonded. And I can provide everything she needs, medical care, school, stability. Ms. Rivera studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I'll note your offer. But there are procedures, background checks, home visits. It could take days. I understand, Daniel said. Just don't take her away today. After Ms. Rivera left, the house felt heavier. Maya sat on the stairs, arms wrapped around herself. Lily went to her. You're not leaving, right? Maya looked at Daniel, eyes full of fear. Am I? He sat beside her. Not if I can help it. That afternoon, he called his lawyer. Not the corporate one, but the friend who'd helped him with his wife's estate. "I need to know," he said, "what it takes to become a temporary guardian for a child in crisis." The lawyer listened, then sighed. "It's not simple, but it's possible. You'll need to prove you can provide a stable, safe environment, and the courts move slowly." "I don't care how long it takes," Daniel said. "I just want her to feel safe." Over the next few days, life settled into a new rhythm. Maya stayed in the guest room. She helped Lily with homework. She started eating full meals. She even smiled once when Lily tripped over the dog and landed in a pile of laundry. But at night, Daniel would hear soft crying through the walls. Once he found her sitting on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., knees to her chest shaking. He didn't say anything, just sat on the tile beside her, back against the wall, and waited. After a while, she leaned her head on his shoulder. "I thought no one would ever stop," she whispered. He didn't ask what she meant. He just put an arm around her and said, "You're safe now. I've got you." School started again that week. Lily went back with a backpack full of snacks and a new friendship bracelet she'd made for Maya. Daniel drove Maya to the local middle school to enroll her. The principal was kind, the teachers welcoming. But as they walked the halls, Maya's steps slowed. What if someone finds me?" she asked quietly. "Who?" Daniel asked. She didn't answer. But her eyes said everything. That evening after dinner, Daniel sat with her on the porch. The air was cool, the sky clear. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said. "But if you ever want to talk, I'm here. No judgment. No rushing. Just listening." She stared at her hands. "My parents died last year. Car accident. After that, I went to live with my uncle. He wasn't nice." She swallowed hard. "He said if I told anyone, he'd make it worse. So I ran." Daniel's stomach twisted, but he kept his voice steady. "You were brave to run, and you're brave to be here." She looked at him then, really looked. "Why are you helping me?" "You don't even know me." He thought for a moment. "Because once someone helped me when I didn't think I could go on. And because my daughter needed a sister. Maybe I needed a daughter too." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. Inside, Lily called out, "Dad." "Maya, come see the fireflies." They went in. The girls spent the evening chasing the tiny lights in the backyard, laughing like they'd known each other forever. Later, as Daniel tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "Is Maya staying?" "I hope so," he said. "Good," she said, already half asleep. "I like her." Upstairs, he checked on Maya. She was reading under the covers a library book about ocean animals. "Lights out in 10, he said softly. She nodded. "Thanks for everything." He paused at the door. "You belong here, Maya. However long it takes. However hard it gets, you're not alone anymore." He turned off the light and closed the door gently. Downstairs, he sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring out the window. The paperwork would come, the questions, the waiting. But none of that mattered as much as the quiet truth settling in his heart. This wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore. This was about family. And for the first time in 2 years, the house didn't feel empty. It felt like it was finally coming alive again. Weeks passed and the house settled into a new kind of normal. Mornings began with the smell of pancakes and the sound of 2 girls arguing over who got the last blueberry muffin. Evenings ended with homework at the kitchen table, board games on the living room floor, and sometimes quiet talks on the porch swing under a sky full of stars. Maya was still quiet most of the time, but she was smiling more, laughing more. She'd started leaving her door open at night, and sometimes when thunder rolled in the distance, she'd wander down the hall and knock softly on Lily's door just to sleep in the same room. Daniel watched it all with a quiet kind of wonder. He hadn't planned for this. He'd only meant to help a girl in the rain. But life had a way of turning small choices into something much bigger. Still, not everything was easy. One afternoon, as he sat in his home office reviewing contracts, his phone buzzed. It was his CFO. "We've got a problem," the voice said, tight with stress. "Venture Partners is making a move. They're trying to buy up shares quietly. If they get enough, they could force you out." Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. His company, the one he'd built from a garage project into something real, was now under threat. And the timing couldn't be worse. He'd already missed 2 school events this month. He'd promised Maya he'd be at her first parent-teacher conference. He couldn't keep choosing between his business and his family. But how could he walk away from the company that provided for them? That night, after the girls were in bed, he sat alone in the kitchen, staring at his laptop screen. Emails piled up. Investors wanted answers. Lawyers wanted meetings. And all he could think about was the way Maya had looked at him that morning when he'd dropped her off at school. Like she was still waiting to see if he'd disappear. Like everyone else had. He closed the laptop. The next day he called an emergency board meeting. Not at the office, here at his house. He wanted them to see where his priorities now lived. As executives arrived in suits and polished shoes, they were met by Lily showing Maya how to bake cookies, flour dusting their noses, laughter filling the air. During the meeting, Daniel didn't talk about stock prices or quarterly growth. He talked about purpose. This company was never just about profit, he said, voice steady. It was about building something that lasts, something that helps people. If we lose that, what's the point? Some board members looked skeptical. Others nodded slowly. In the end, they agreed to fight the takeover. But Daniel made one thing clear. He would step back from day-to-day operations. He'd stay as chairman but hire a new CEO. I've got 2 daughters who need me more than the office does, he said simply. The room fell silent. Then one of the older board members smiled. About time someone put family first. Back in the kitchen, Maya was waiting. She'd overheard part of the conversation through the door. You're really doing that? She asked. For us? He knelt so he was at her eye level. For me too. I forgot what mattered most. You reminded me. She hugged him then, awkward at first, then tight, like she was holding on to something precious. But just as things began to feel stable, the past came knocking. It started with a letter. Official-looking, stamped with a county seal. Daniel opened it at the breakfast table, coffee cooling in his mug. His face went pale as he read. What is it? Lily asked, mouthful of toast. Maya watched him, her spoon frozen midair. It's your uncle, Daniel said slowly, looking at Maya. He's filed a petition. He says you ran away, that you're being influenced by strangers. He wants custody back. Maya dropped her spoon. It clattered against the bowl. Her face went white. No, she whispered. Please, no. He can't just take you, Daniel said firmly. Not after everything, but we'll have to go to court. The words hung in the air like storm clouds. Over the next few days, Maya barely spoke. She jumped at every knock on the door. She stopped sleeping through the night. One evening, Daniel found her sitting on the back steps, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the garden. He sat beside her. You don't have to face this alone. I'm scared, she admitted, voice trembling. What if they believe him? What if they say I'm lying? Then we'll prove you're not, he said. We'll get doctors, counselors, teachers, anyone who's seen how you've healed. And I'll be there. Every step, she looked at him, eyes glistening. Why do you care so much? He thought for a long moment. Because when I found you in the rain, I saw someone who'd been told they didn't matter. But you do. You matter more than you know. Inside, Lily had been listening from the window. The next day at school, she came home with a notebook full of ideas. We should tell everyone Maya's story, she said. Not the scary parts, but how brave she is. How she's getting better. Daniel smiled. That's a good idea. With his help, Lily started a small fundraiser at school. Blankets for brave kids. She collected gently used blankets, stuffed animals, and books to donate to the local youth shelter. Maya helped organize them, folding each blanket with care, writing little notes to tuck inside. You're not alone. Someone sees you. The project grew. Other kids joined. Teachers got involved. Local news even did a short piece. And through it all, Maya stood a little taller. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was someone helping others. Meanwhile, Daniel met with his lawyer again. The court date's set, the lawyer said. It won't be easy. Your uncle's hired a slick attorney. They'll try to paint you as an unstable runaway and you as a rich guy trying to play hero. I'm not playing anything, Daniel said. I'm just doing what's right. Then we'll need more than good intentions, the lawyer replied. We'll need proof of stability, emotional support, and most importantly, Maya's own voice. That night, Daniel sat with Maya at the kitchen table. The judge will want to hear from you, he said gently. Only if you're ready. You don't have to say everything. Just enough to show who you are now and why you can't go back. She was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded. Okay, I'll try. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, she worked with a counselor, someone trained to help kids talk about hard things without re-traumatizing them. Slowly, she began to find her words, not just about the pain, but about the hope. About the first time she laughed without flinching. About how Lily shared her favorite sweater. About how Daniel always left a nightlight on in the hallway. One evening, as they practiced what she might say in court, she turned to him. "What if I mess up?" "You won't," he said, "because you'll be telling the truth. And the truth doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours." The night before the hearing, a storm rolled in again. Light rain this time, gentle and steady. Daniel stood on the porch watching the drops fall. Maya joined him, wrapped in a hoodie. "Remember that night?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I'll never forget it. I thought I was going to disappear," she said. "Like no one would notice if I was gone." "Well," he said, putting an arm around her shoulders. "I noticed. And I'm glad I did." Inside, Lily called out, "Dad! Maya, the cookies are ready!" They went in. The kitchen was warm, lit by soft yellow light. The smell of chocolate and vanilla filled the air. The three of them sat at the table, eating slightly burnt cookies and laughing at Lily's joke about a dancing toaster. In that moment, Daniel realized something. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was a home, built not on money or plans, but on small acts of kindness, shared silence, and the courage to say, "Stay." The next morning, they dressed in their best clothes, not fancy, just clean and neat. As they drove to the courthouse, Maya held Lily's hand in the back seat. Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her take a deep breath. "You've got this," he said. She nodded. "Because I'm not alone." At the courthouse, the room was cold and quiet. Lawyers shuffled papers. The uncle sat on the other side of the aisle, arms crossed, eyes hard. But when Maya walked in, she didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead, at the judge, at Daniel, at the future she was fighting for. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was quiet at first. But it grew stronger with every word. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just told the truth about the fear, the running, the rain, and the man who stopped his car and said, "Come with me." And for the first time, she said out loud what she'd only whispered before. "He's my dad now." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He didn't wipe them away. Later, outside the courthouse, as the sun broke through the clouds, Lily threw her arms around Maya. "You did it!" Maya smiled, a real full smile, and looked at Daniel. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, putting an arm around both girls, "we go home." And for the first time in a long time, home didn't just mean a place. It meant people. It meant love that chose you again and again, even when the world tried to pull you apart. The court ruling didn't fix everything overnight, but it changed everything. The judge granted temporary guardianship to Daniel, with a clear path toward full adoption if things continued to go well over the next year. The uncle's petition was dismissed, not just because of lack of evidence, but because the court saw what really mattered. Maya was safe, she was healing, and she had people who loved her without asking for anything in return. Still, the victory felt fragile. Like a bird with a mended wing, free to fly, but still learning how. That night, back at the house, Lily insisted on a celebration. She dragged out old party hats from a birthday months ago, made popcorn with too much butter, and played their favorite movie, something silly with talking animals and a happy ending. Maya sat between her and Daniel on the couch, wrapped in the pink blanket, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't flinch when someone laughed too loud. But the next morning, reality returned. School, homework, therapy sessions, and the quiet work of rebuilding trust, not just in others, but in herself. Daniel noticed small things. How Maya would pause before walking into a room, like she was checking if it was safe. How she'd watch him when he raised his voice, not in anger, but just to call Lily for dinner. And how her shoulders would relax only after she realized he wasn't yelling at her. Healing wasn't a straight line. Some days were bright. Others, she'd retreat into silence, staring out the window like she was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. One afternoon, while sorting laundry, Daniel found a crumpled piece of paper in Maya's pocket. It was a drawing, Two stick figures holding hands under a rainbow with the words "My Family" written in careful letters at the top. His throat tightened. He smoothed it out and tucked it into his wallet. He knew then he wanted more than temporary custody. He wanted to adopt her, fully, legally, forever. He talked to his lawyer again. "It's possible," the lawyer said, "but it'll take time. And the court will want to see consistent stability. No major changes, no red flags." "No problem," Daniel said. "We're not going anywhere." But life had other plans. A few weeks later, during a routine check-in with the social worker, Maya was asked a simple question. "Do you remember anything else about where you lived before you ran away?" She froze. Then quietly, "There was a man who came sometimes. In a black truck, my uncle. He'd send me to my room when he came." The social worker's pen stopped moving. "Did that man ever hurt you?" Maya shook her head quickly. "No, but he scared me. He'd look at me like I was something to buy." The room went still. Later, Daniel sat with the social worker in the kitchen, heart pounding. "We need to report this," she said gently. "It could be nothing, or it could be part of something bigger." Daniel nodded. "Do what you need to do, but keep Maya safe." What followed was a quiet investigation. Police interviews, background checks on the uncle, even a visit from a special unit that handled cases involving at-risk youth. Thankfully, there was no evidence Maya had been harmed by anyone else. But the mere mention of that black truck, the way her voice dropped when she described it, was enough to add another layer of protection to her case. The court sealed more records. The uncle was barred from coming within a mile of the house. Through it all, Daniel made sure Maya never felt like a case. She was just Maya, his daughter. He took her to soccer practice. She'd joined the school team. Helped her build a birdhouse for science class. And stayed up late helping her memorize lines for the school play, even though she only had 2. One evening, as they painted the birdhouse on the back porch, she asked, "Do you ever wish you hadn't found me that night?" He stopped brushing paint and looked at her. Not for a single second, even with all this mess. "Especially because of it," he said. "You've shown me what really matters. Not success, not money, just showing up for someone when they need you most." She dipped her brush in blue paint and added a tiny heart to the roof. "I'm glad you stopped your car." Inside the house, Lily was on the phone with a friend, excitedly planning their next Blankets for Brave Kids drive. The project had grown. Now they were collecting school supplies too, and even warm coats for winter. Local businesses had started donating. A small news segment had called it "A Ripple of Kindness." Daniel watched his daughters through the window. 2 girls who'd found each other in the most unlikely way, and felt a quiet pride. They weren't just surviving. They were making the world softer for others, but he knew he could do more. One night after the girls were asleep, he sat at his desk and started drafting a plan. Not for his old company, but for something new. A foundation. Not flashy. Not for headlines. Just a quiet place where kids like Maya could find shelter, counseling, and someone who'd say, "Come with me," without expecting anything back. He called it the Raindrop Project. Because sometimes, one small act of kindness is all it takes to change a life. He used a portion of his savings to fund it. Hired a small team, therapists, caseworkers, educators, who cared more about people than paychecks. Found a modest building near the edge of town, painted the walls bright colors, filled the shelves with books and games. The first shelter opened 6 months later. On opening day, Maya stood beside him holding Lily's hand. She didn't speak to the small crowd gathered, just smiled and handed out handmade welcome cards to the first group of kids who walked through the door. Later, as they drove home, she said, "You built this for me?" "No," he said. "I built it because of you, but it's for everyone who's ever felt invisible." She was quiet for a while. "Venta, can I volunteer here? When I'm older?" "Of course," he said. "You can run it if you want," she laughed. A real light laugh that filled the car. "Maybe I will." As the months passed, the adoption process moved forward. Home visits, paperwork, interviews. Each step felt like another brick in the foundation of their family. And through it all, Maya grew stronger. She made friends at school. She started playing the guitar. She even argued with Lily over whose turn it was to feed the dog. Normal, everyday things that meant the world. Then came the day of the final court hearing. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No last-minute surprises. Just a quiet courtroom, a kind judge, and 3 people who had chosen each other. When the judge signed the adoption papers, she smiled. Congratulations. You're a family now, in every way that counts. Afterward, they went to their favorite diner, the one with the sticky tables and bottomless hot chocolate. Lily ordered pancakes. Maya got waffles. Daniel just sat back and watched them, full in a way that had nothing to do with food. On the drive home, Maya turned to him. Can I ask you something? Always. Will you ever stop being my dad? He met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Never, not in a million years. Not even if you start liking broccoli, she grinned. Good, because I don't think I'll ever like broccoli. That night, as he tucked her in, she handed him a folded piece of paper. For you. He opened it later, alone in his room. It was a letter. Dear Dad, thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for not giving up, even when I was scared to trust. I used to think love was something you earned. But you showed me it's something you just give, freely, even to strangers in the rain. I'm not that scared girl anymore. And it's because of you. Love, Maya. He read it 3 times. Then he placed it in the same drawer as the drawing of their family. Outside, the world kept turning. But inside that house, something rare and beautiful had taken root. Not built on luck or money, but on choice. On showing up. On saying, come with me, when it would have been easier to drive on. And that, more than anything, was the real happy ending. 1 year after that rainy night, the sky was clear and the air smelled like fresh-cut grass and blooming lilacs. It was the kind of morning that felt like a promise. Soft, hopeful, full of quiet joy. Inside the house, there was a flurry of gentle chaos. Lily was trying to braid Maya's hair while balancing a cup of hot chocolate in her other hand. Daniel stood by the mirror in the hallway, straightening his tie for the 3rd time, his fingers slightly unsteady. Today was the day. Not just any day. Today was the day the adoption would be finalized. Not in a big courtroom with strangers watching, but in a small sunlit room at the county courthouse, with only the people who truly mattered. The 2 girls, Daniel, their longtime family therapist, and the woman who had been his late wife's closest friend. The one who'd held his hand at the funeral and brought soup every Sunday for months afterward. Maya wore a simple blue dress, the one she'd picked out herself last week. It's the color of calm, she'd said. Lily wore yellow because it's the color of happiness, and she wanted today to be full of it. Daniel wore a dark suit, but no fancy watch, no expensive shoes, just clean clothes and a heart that felt too big for his chest. As they drove to the courthouse, no one spoke much. But the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, like they were all holding the same thought in their hands, careful not to drop it. At the courthouse, the judge greeted them with a warm smile. She'd read their file. She knew the story, the storm, the bus stop, the long road to trust. She didn't make a speech. She just asked Maya one question. Do you want this man to be your father, legally forever in every way that counts? Maya looked at Daniel, then back at the judge. Yes, she said, clear and strong. More than anything. The judge signed the papers. Just like that, it was done, no fanfare. No cameras. Just 3 people who had found each other in the wreckage of loss and fear, now bound together not by blood, but by something deeper, by choice, by courage, by love that showed up when it was needed most. Afterward, they walked out into the sunlight. Lily threw her arms around Maya. You're really my sister now. Maya hugged her back, laughing. I always was. Daniel stood a few steps behind, watching them. His eyes stung. He didn't wipe them away. Later, they went to the park, the same one with the old oak tree and the tire swing Lily still used, even though she claimed to be too old for it now. They spread out a blanket and ate sandwiches and cookies Lily had baked that morning, slightly burnt but full of heart. The dog, a scrappy mutt they'd adopted a few months ago, chased butterflies and flopped down in the grass, panting happily. As the afternoon sun warmed their backs, Maya pulled something from her pocket. A small envelope folded neatly. She handed it to Daniel. For you, she said. He opened it slowly. Inside was a card she'd made herself. Hand-drawn flowers, glitter that had already started flaking off, and in careful handwriting, thank you for seeing me when no one else did. He read it twice, then tucked it into his shirt pocket right over his heart. That evening, they didn't do anything grand. No party, no speeches. Just the three of them, eating pizza on the living room floor, watching a movie Lily had picked out. Halfway through, Maya leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder. Lily curled up at his feet, wrapped in the pink blanket. And in that quiet moment, Daniel realized something. He wasn't just healing anymore. He was whole. Life didn't stop being complicated after that. There were still school projects, scraped knees, arguments over screen time, and nights when Maya woke up from a bad dream. But now, there was also laughter at the dinner table, inside jokes, bedtime stories, and the sound of two voices calling Dad. From different rooms at the same time. Daniel had stepped back from running his company day to day, but he hadn't disappeared from the world. Instead, he poured his energy into the Raindrop Project. What started as a single shelter had grown. They now ran after-school programs, offered counseling for teens in crisis, and even helped train foster parents in trauma-informed care. Maya volunteered every chance she got, tutoring younger kids, organizing donation drives, sometimes just sitting quietly with someone who needed to feel seen. One Saturday, as they sorted winter coats for the upcoming drive, Maya looked up from a pile of scarves. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stopped that night?" Daniel paused, folding a child-sized jacket. "Sometimes. But then I look at you and I know I'd do it 1,000 times over," she smiled. "I'd find you too, you know. Even if it took years," he believed her. Time passed. Seasons changed. The girls grew taller. Lily got her first bike. Maya made the honor roll. Daniel learned to braid hair, badly, cook vegan meals, surprisingly well, and listen without trying to fix everything. On the 2-year anniversary of that rainy night, they didn't talk about it much. But that evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Maya stood on the porch with Daniel, watching the first drops fall. "Remember?" she said softly. He nodded. "I do." She leaned against him. "I used to hate the rain. Now, it just reminds me that someone stopped." He put an arm around her. "And I'll always stop for you." Inside, Lily called out, "Dad!" "Maya, the cookies are ready!" They went in. The house was warm, lit by soft lamps and the glow of the kitchen. The smell of chocolate and cinnamon filled the air. The dog barked at nothing, tail wagging. And as they sat around the table, 2 daughters, 1 dad, 1 messy, imperfect. Beautiful family. Daniel knew he had everything he'd ever needed. Not because of the house, or the money, or even the success of his foundation, but because he'd opened his door when the world told him to keep driving. Because he'd chosen love over fear. Because he'd said, "Come with me," and meant it with his whole heart. Years later, when people asked Maya about her story, she never focused on the pain. She talked about the rain, yes, but more than that, she talked about the hand that reached out. The voice that said, "You're safe." The home that waited. And whenever she spoke at a youth event or visited a new shelter under the Raindrop Project, she always ended the same way. "You don't have to be alone. Someone out there is willing to stop their car. You just have to believe it." Back at home, life went on, ordinary, messy, full of love. Mornings began with sleepy hugs and mismatched socks. Evenings ended with stories, songs, and the quiet comfort of knowing you belong. And on nights when the rain fell hard, no one in that house was afraid. Because they knew deep in their bones that even in the worst storm, someone would always say, "Come with me."